Close the door, chosen one, not because what is in this room needs to be kept from the world, but because what the world carries cannot follow you in here. The version of you that performs, the one that smiles at the right moment and laughs a beat after everyone else so nobody notices it wasn't real, that version stays outside. The one being addressed tonight is the other one, the one that exhales when the door clicks shut, the one whose shoulders drop the moment nobody is watching. This room knows you, not your reputation, the composed version you assembled before you walked out this morning. The chair you are in has held more of your actual self than most of the conversations you had this week. And what is about to be spoken here was not prepared for a crowd. It was carried for one person on one specific night. Matthew 6 verse 6 is a verse most people read as prayer instruction, but hear it as geography. When you pray, go into your room, close the door and pray to your Father who is unseen. Then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. The closed room is not a withdrawal from God's presence. It is the address where He does His most specific work. The Father who sees in secret does not reward the performance in the open. He rewards what happens when only He is watching. Isaiah 45 verse 3 adds a dimension most people miss entirely. I will give you hidden treasures, riches stored in secret places, so that you may know that I am the Lord. The treasures were never in the public square. They were stored in the places most people never stay long enough to find. The room you are sitting in right now is not a place of lack. It is a vault, and tonight the combination is being given. Stay until the end. Not because the beginning is not enough, because the words land differently the further you go. Something is being named in this space that has needed naming for longer than you know. And the version of you that walked through that door and closed it is the only version it was ever sent for. 1. 5 signs your spirit already recognizes. Your body knew before your mind caught up. There have been changes happening in you over the last several months, quiet and incremental, impossible to explain to someone who has not been inside the same season, and your spirit has been registering every one of them, even while your conscious mind was still trying to assign a different label. So before anything else is said, let these 5 signs do what words do when they finally match what a person has been living. Let them land. The first sign is in your conversations. The ones you used to look forward to have started to cost you something. Not because the people changed or because anything fractured, but because something in you has outgrown the shape of what those conversations hold. The group chat that used to feel like community now feels like a weight you carry into the evening. This is not bitterness. Your spirit is simply recognizing what no longer matches the frequency it carries. The second sign is in what used to restore you. The show you would have stayed awake to finish now stays paused. Plans that would have thrilled you now feel like something you would honestly rather release. Luke 10 verse 42 gives this a different name. Mary chose the better portion by leaving the noise and sitting in the one place that was actually feeding her. The dimming of the distractions was not depression, it was discernment. The decoy lights had to lose their pull before the real signal could become visible. The third sign is in the patterns, the same phrase from 2 unrelated people in the same week, a verse surfacing in 3 different places within 2 days. A specific word spoken in a conversation you almost didn't have. The heavens have been marking a path, and the markers have been arriving with a consistency that chance cannot account for. The trail is intentional. The 4th sign is in the dreams. They have become more specific than your waking hours, more vivid, more coherent, more weighted with meaning that survives the morning. Job 33:15-16 describes it precisely. In a dream, in a vision of the night, when deep sleep falls on people as they slumber in their beds, He may speak in their ears. The sleeping mind is not generating noise, it is receiving. The part of you that has access to a deeper frequency has been given more room to operate while your conscious defenses are at rest. What you wake up carrying from those dreams is not residue, it is correspondence. The 5th sign is the most specific. Your body has been waking at the same hour, 3 in the morning, or 4, or some other consistent point in the night that you did not choose and cannot seem to override. 1 Samuel 3 verse 10 is the model for this pattern. God called Samuel by name in the night repeatedly until Samuel finally sat up and said, "Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening." Samuel was not insomniac, he was being addressed, and the address was personal. It came to him by name in the dark before he understood who was speaking. The next time your body wakes at that hour without explanation, do not force yourself back to sleep. Sit up. Offer one sentence. "I am here, I am listening." That is enough. The hour is not punishing you, the hour is reaching for you. If 3 or more of those signs just landed in this room with you, if your body registered something recognizable in the middle of any of them, you can stop second-guessing the season you are in. You are in this one, and the season is not the point. What is being formed inside the season is the point. The season is the workshop, and what is being built inside it, the part no one around you can see right now, is what the rest of this message walks into. 2. You were not abandoned in the room, you were stationed. The worst interpretation of solitude is that it means you were forgotten, that something went wrong, that the people who left did so because there was something wrong with you, or that the quiet that has settled around your life is evidence of divine indifference. Hear this clearly, before that interpretation goes one more day without being corrected. You were not left in the room. You were placed there, and there is a word in the original language of Scripture that changes everything about what that placement means. Genesis 2 verse 15 records the first assignment given to a human being. The Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and take care of it. The English word "take care of" does not carry the weight of what was actually said. The Hebrew word is Shamar. And Shamar does not mean to maintain the way a gardener keeps a yard or a homeowner keeps a property. Shamar means to guard with reverence, to watch over with the intensity of someone who understands what they are protecting. To stand sentinel over what is sacred. Shamar is what a soldier does at the entrance of a king's chamber. Shamar is what a priest does over an ancient flame that is not allowed to go out. The first calling given to humanity was not to produce, not to perform, not to be seen. It was to stand watch over something sacred. That word carries a different quality of loneliness than the one most people have assigned to their season. The soldier at the gate is not lonely in the way of the forgotten. He is alone in the way of the trusted. Ezekiel 33 verse 7 gives this the prophetic dimension. "Son of man, I have made you a watchman for the people of Israel." The watchman in ancient cities was stationed at the highest and most exposed point, furthest from the warmth of the crowd, furthest from the noise of the market, furthest from the comfort of company. And he was stationed there precisely because what he was being asked to see could only be seen from that position. The one who sees first is always the one who was positioned furthest from the distraction. Distance from the crowd was not punishment. It was qualification. Habakkuk 2 verse 1 shows the prophet making this choice deliberately. "I will stand at my watch and station myself on the ramparts. I will look to see what he will say to me." Habakkuk does not wait to be stationed. He positions himself. He recognizes that the word he is waiting for cannot be received from a crowded place, and he moves toward the elevated, exposed, solitary post, because that is where the message arrives. The rampart is not a place of comfort. It is a place of access. What Habakkuk understood, and what most people in a season of solitude do not yet understand, is that the elevated post was not a demotion from the center. It was a promotion to a vantage point the center could not provide. From the wall, he could see what the market could not. The room you have been living in is a rampart. The evenings you have spent without company, without noise, without the familiar rhythm of social life, filling every available hour, those were not hours of absence. They were hours of post. What you have been carrying in the private season is too unformed, too sacred, too specific to have survived unguarded exposure. The solitude was not a symptom of being passed over. It was a security clearance. What is entrusted to a watchman cannot be left unwatched. You are not lonely, you are on post. 3. What the hidden season has actually been building. The years look different from the outside than they were on the inside. From the outside, they may have appeared slow, unproductive, socially contracted, possibly worrying to the people who knew you before the season began. From the inside, something was happening that no external measurement could track. A construction project with no visible scaffolding, no announcement of completion, no certificate of occupancy handed over at the end. But the building was real, and what was built will hold what is coming. 4 things were formed in the hidden season. Not given, formed. There is a difference. A gift arrives complete. A formation is built through use, through resistance, through the specific pressure of a private environment over time. Hebrews 5 verse 14 describes the process plainly. Solid food is for the mature, who by constant use have trained themselves to distinguish good from evil. The word trained carries the image of an athlete, not gifted, not inspired, but trained, through repetition, through private discipline, through the accumulated practice of 1,000 moments no one observed. The first formation is discernment. Not the vague spiritual sense that something is off, but the specific embodied ability to read a room in 30 seconds and know who is safe and who is performing. To walk into a conversation and feel the difference between what is being said and what's actually happening beneath it. This was not given to you because you were particularly intuitive. It was built by years of quiet observation in rooms where you were not performing yourself, where the only task was to watch, to listen, to sit with what you were sensing until you learned to trust it. Every evening alone sharpened that instrument. Every hour without noise gave it another calibration. The second formation is compassion without merging. Earlier in the season, you absorbed other people's pain as if it were your own assignment. Someone's crisis became your crisis. Someone's spiral pulled you into its orbit before you realized you had been pulled. The hidden season did something specific to that. It taught your spirit how to hold someone's weight without taking it on as your own to carry. You can sit with someone in genuine pain now without collapsing into the middle of it. You can feel without drowning. You can care without losing the thread back to yourself. That separation did not come naturally. It was learned across years of learning what you actually carry versus what belongs to someone else. The third formation is stillness as authority. Psalm 46 verse 10 has been domesticated into a comfort verse when it is actually a declaration of power. Be still and know that I am God. The stillness is not passivity. It is the posture that produces knowing. And knowing, settled deep enough, produces a quality that others feel before they can name it. You walk into a room and something shifts before you speak. Your silence carries weight that most people's words do not. This is not personality. Personality is innate. What you carry now is the gravity of a watchman who has stood at the post long enough for the post to become part of them. The fourth formation is the most costly and the least visible. Inner permission. The ability to do the right thing when no one will ever know. When no praise will follow. When the only witness is the one on the inside. Every time you held your integrity in a moment that offered easy compromise. Every time you kept a commitment that no one was tracking. Every time you made the harder choice in private when the easier one would have gone completely unnoticed. Those moments cost something real. And they built something no public achievement can replicate. Because what is held together in private is what survives the pressure of the public season. What the years that looked like waiting were actually building is this: the inner architecture of someone who will not crack under the weight of what is coming. 4. The pattern heaven always uses. What is happening to you has happened before. Not to someone like you. To people who carried what you carry, in rooms that looked like yours, in seasons that felt like this one. The architecture of divine appointment has remained constant across centuries and cultures. And once you see the pattern clearly, what you are living inside stops feeling like an anomaly and starts feeling like a lineage. The pattern is always the same: a private space, a single occupant, heaven's full undivided attention, and a specific word that could not have been delivered in a public setting because it was not meant for a public recipient. It was meant for the version of the person that only exists when the door is closed. Luke 1 verse 28 places Mary in exactly this configuration. She was at home alone, not at the temple, not surrounded by the elders who would have given the announcement its official weight, not in the presence of the family members who would have remembered and repeated it. The angel arrived in the private space and said, "Greetings, you who are highly favored, the Lord is with you." The message could only be delivered to the chamber version of her. The public version would have performed a response. The private version simply received, and what she said back contains more spiritual authority than most formal doctrinal declarations. She did not defend her worthiness. She did not request credentials. She said, "I am the Lord's servant. May it be to me as you have said." The receiving was the response. 1 Kings 19 verse 12 to 13 tells a different kind of private story. Elijah had just experienced his most significant public moment. Fire from heaven, enemies defeated, the nation's spiritual direction restored in a single afternoon. And immediately after, he collapsed. He fled. He went to a cave on a mountain and asked God to end his life. The sequence seems backwards. The greatest public victory followed immediately by the deepest private crisis. But God did not address the crisis in the open. We came to the cave, and when Elijah emerged, what followed was not earthquake, not wind, not fire. It came in a gentle whisper. When Elijah heard it, he pulled his cloak over his face and stood at the mouth of the cave. The next assignment was delivered in hiding. The commission for the next chapter of his life came in the place everyone else would have read as defeat. The cave was not a crisis location, it was a consultation chamber. 1 Samuel 3 verse 9 gives the third instance: a boy called by name in the dark 3 times before he understood who was speaking. Samuel kept running to Eli because the voice was so personal, so specific, so clearly directed at him that he assumed it must have come from the nearest human. When Eli finally understood what was happening, his instruction was simple: go back, lie down. When it happens again, say, "Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening." The call came not because Samuel was spiritually advanced. It came in the night to a child in a room, without fanfare, without a gathered audience. These are not isolated accounts. They are the fingerprints of a God who reserves his most specific communications for private addresses. The chosen are not paged at conferences. They are not summoned at altars in front of crowds, where the performance of the moment would contaminate the purity of the message. They are found in rooms, in caves, in the dark hours of the night, in the specific uncrowded space where the real version of the person can receive what the public version would only manage. The room you are sitting in right now is structurally identical to every one of those locations. A closed door, one person, heaven's full attention. The script you are inside has been written before, in different languages and different centuries. But the architecture has not changed. You are in the same order that has always produced the same result. 3 areas about to reorganize. Formation does not stay internal forever. What has been built in the hidden season eventually has to find its first use. And the reorganization that is beginning around your life is not something to manage. It is something to recognize. Because when you can name what is happening, you stop interpreting it as loss. You start reading it as the natural consequence of becoming someone the previous arrangement was not built to hold. 3 specific areas of your life are in the middle of this reorganization right now. The first is your relationships. People you assumed were permanent fixtures are beginning to feel like they occupy a different frequency than the one you now carry. Conversations that used to sustain you are getting shorter. Check-ins that used to feel natural are getting rarer. Some connections will not survive this season, not because anyone failed, not because there was a rupture, but because the shape of who you used to be was the bridge between you, and that shape has changed. A tree growing does not rupture its previous rings, it simply adds new ones, but the space between branches widens. What you are experiencing is not rejection, it is growth visible only from the outside as distance. Do not chase the people who are drifting. Do not resurrect old versions of yourself to keep them at the table. The temptation will be strong, particularly in the early weeks, to perform the familiar self just long enough to restore the comfort of the previous arrangement. Resist it, because the people who speak the language your spirit has been learning in private cannot find you while you are still pretending to fit the old table. Proverbs 16 verse 9 carries the provision principle beneath all of this. In their hearts humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps. The connections being removed were part of a plan. The connections approaching are part of a course correction. And just as 1 Kings 17 verse 9 shows, go at once to Zarephath and stay there. I have directed a widow there to supply you with food. The provision of this next season will not come through the sources you strategize toward. It will come through a widow in a village you were not planning to pass through, an unexpected contact, a door in an entirely unrelated field, a phone call you almost declined. The specific routing of what is coming cannot be predicted from the current position, only trusted. The second area is your purpose. The direction that has felt vague for years is beginning to sharpen, not in a dramatic vision but in small, undeniable nudges that arrive at strange hours and refuse to be dismissed. An impression during an ordinary morning, a line from something you read that snagged on something deeper than reading, a domain that keeps reappearing regardless of how many times you redirect your thoughts. The simultaneous feeling when that sharpening arrives will be terror and aliveness at the same time. The terror is not a stop sign. It is the body recognizing that the path is real. What you are feeling is the nervous system registering contact with the actual map. The first step does not reveal the second step. The first step earns it. The third area is your provision. Doors are going to open in places you did not position yourself toward. A skill set aside, a project that found you rather than the reverse, an invitation from a direction you had written off. These are the specific routing of a God who does not use the roads people expect. The temptation when provision arrives unexpectedly is to shrink from it, to apologize for the size of what is being placed in your hands. Stop. Receive it. What is arriving is exactly proportional to what was formed in the hidden season. The watchman who stood at the post carries the right to speak into what he saw. 6. The voice that will try to undo this. Within the next 48 hours, a voice is going to try to dismantle what landed in this room tonight. Not loudly, quietly, in the specific register of your own interior monologue, with the particular vocabulary that has the most access to your doubt. And before it gets the chance to speak, it needs to be named for what it actually is. The voice sounds like self-awareness. It presents itself as the reasonable correction to what might be wishful thinking. It will say, maybe you are just tired and looking for meaning in ordinary tiredness. Maybe the patterns you noticed were coincidence, and the significance you assigned them reveals more about your need for significance than about any actual divine activity. Maybe the recognition you felt during this message was emotional, not true. Maybe the whole thing lands by morning as another passing moment that did not hold. That voice has been with you for a long time. You know its shape, you know the register it uses. What you may not know is where it was installed. It was not installed by truth. It was installed by environments, rooms, systems, relationships, early caregivers that did not know what to do with the clarity you carried. By teachers who confused humility with self-erasure. By spaces that rewarded smallness and treated confidence as something dangerous that needed to be quickly corrected. By communities that could only hold you if you held yourself smaller than what you actually were. The voice learned its vocabulary in rooms where what you carried made other people uncomfortable. And so it became a preemptive protective mechanism, quieting you before anyone else could. Judges 6, verse 12 shows what happens when heaven speaks to a doubt voice has been doing the same work. An angel of the Lord appears to Gideon while he is hiding in a winepress, threshing wheat in secret so the enemy cannot find it. The posture of someone who has reduced themselves to surviving in concealment. And the angel's first words are, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior," not, "The Lord will be with you if you become a warrior." The Lord is with you, right now. In the winepress, in the hiding place, in the survival posture, mighty warrior is the address, not the aspiration. Gideon's response in Judges 6 verse 15 is word for word what the doubt voice sounds like in The Chosen. "My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family." The specific, detailed self-epistle of someone who has been convinced by their circumstances that the address must have been intended for someone else. Gideon's doubt was not unique to Gideon. It is the standard first response of every person genuinely called. Moses said he could not speak. Jeremiah said he was too young. Isaiah said he was unclean. The doubt response is not evidence against the calling. It is evidence of it. The ones who receive divine address without hesitation are the ones who were already positioned for public performance, not private formation. Beneath the doubt voice lives a more specific fear, the fear that claiming what has been given would produce arrogance. So the person preempts the arrogance by refusing to receive. They stay small to stay safe. They disclaim the calling so no one can ever accuse them of pride. But Romans 8 verse 33 does not consult the person's comfort level before making its declaration. Who will bring any charge against those whom God has chosen? It is God who justifies. The calling does not require your agreement to be valid. The address was not conditional on your acceptance. It was spoken before you heard it. It will remain after you doubt it. What changes when you receive it is not its reality. It is your access to what it carries. Refusing to receive what is yours is not humility. It is fear wearing humility's costume. Real humility says yes to the assignment without pretending the assignment is small. Or 7, outgrowing the shape of your old self. A second pattern follows the doubt voice, usually arriving quietly in the day or two after a significant interior moment. It does not look like doubt. It looks like practical wisdom. It looks like returning to normal. It will present as the reasonable choice to simply resume what you were doing before this room was entered. The familiar habits, the familiar conversations, the familiar level of spiritual engagement that has always felt manageable without requiring too much of you. And underneath the reasonable surface of it is something your spirit needs to be able to identify before the pull becomes a current. What you are feeling in that moment is the nervous system's attempt to return to a familiar level of energy. Not because the familiar is better, because the body learned safety in the territory of scarcity and freedom, even when freedom is exactly what was promised, feels destabilizing to a system that spent years surviving on less. The body does not distinguish between the discomfort of danger and the discomfort of expansion. Both feel like threat. And so when what is coming feels too large, too real, too specific to be deflected as feeling, the system reaches backward toward what it already knows how to regulate. This pull will look like re-engaging with the conversations that drain you. Like agreeing to social commitments that cost your private time at exactly the moment your private time needs protecting most. Like filling the silence that has been producing something real with noise that produces nothing. Like returning, almost on purpose, to the old table just to prove to yourself that you haven't become too good for it. That specific pattern is not weakness. It is an old protection strategy. It just has no useful function in the season you are entering. The people in Scripture who most visibly struggled with this pull are often the ones most honestly documented. Jonah ran in the opposite direction from the assignment, not because he didn't hear the call, but because he did. And the call felt too large, too exposed, requiring him to carry a message into a city that had no reason to receive it from him. Peter returned to fishing after the resurrection, not out of abandonment, but because the net and the boat were the last things his hands had known how to do with certainty. Or consider what Peter looked like on that shore. A man who had walked on water, who had seen the transfiguration, who had been the first to say, "You are the Christ," hauling fish at dawn, because the familiar was the only thing that didn't require him to figure out who he was after the resurrection changed everything. In both cases, the next divine address found them in the retreat. Jonah in the fish, Peter on the shore with a charcoal fire and a question about love. The return to the familiar did not disqualify either of them, but it cost them time. And time in a season with a specific window is not an unlimited resource. The invitation here is not to white-knuckle through the discomfort of expansion. It is to learn to distinguish between the feeling of genuine danger and the feeling of real growth. They share a physical register, but they do not share an origin. Danger contracts toward survival. Growth expands toward purpose. The contraction that follows a significant encounter in a private room is almost always the latter, dressed as the former. Let the old shape fall, not all at once, not with performance or announcement. Just stop actively defending the outline of who you were when what you are becoming has already started requiring more room. The branches have been growing. The space between them is real. And what grows into that space will not look like what was there before, but it will be more true to what you were made to carry than anything that came before. 8. What was built in private is about to be witnessed. Here is what was actually happening during every quiet evening. Every conversation you did not pursue was building compassion that can now hold someone without consuming itself in the holding. Every plan that fell through was building a stillness that no longer requires the right circumstances to maintain its quality. Every right thing you did in private when no one would ever know was building the kind of permission that cannot be shaken by the opinions of a crowd, because it was never dependent on a crowd to stand. The years that looked like stagnation from the outside were the years the interior architecture was being completed. What was built in private is now ready to be carried into the open. Matthew 10 verse 27 carries this as a commission, not a suggestion. What I tell you in the dark, speak in the daylight. What is whispered in your ear, proclaim from the rooftops. The private word was never the destination. It was the preparation for the public carrying. What was received in the closed room was always meant to leave it. The formation was in service of the function. The function is beginning. Ecclesiastes 3 verse 1 is not comfort here. It is precision. There is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. The season of formation has a finish line. Seasons are not permanent. The one you have been inside has done what it was designed to do, and the evidence of its completion is the readiness you feel underneath the doubt. The part of you that recognizes the description of what was built and knows, quietly and without theater, that it is accurate. The watchman does not stand on the wall forever. There comes a specific moment when what was seen from the wall has to be carried into the city. The warning has to be spoken. The message has to move. The watchman who stays at the post after the watch has ended is not more faithful. He is simply unavailable to the people who needed what he was carrying. What you carry now is specific. It is not a general spiritual goodwill. It is the particular combination of discernment, compassion, stillness, and inner permission that was built by the exact set of experiences that no one else had in the exact sequence you had them. That makes what you carry original. Not better than what others carry, original to the assignment you were built for. And original is not replicated. No one else can do what you were formed to do, which means no one else can replace your arrival in the places your assignment requires. You are not late. You are not unprepared. You are not the version of yourself that entered the hidden season. Something has been completed in you that was not complete before, and the completing does not announce itself with ceremony. It announces itself the way a door opening announces itself, quietly, with the sound of a latch releasing and the sudden presence of air from a room that was sealed. The door is opening not back into the hallway you came from, forward, into the first room that requires what this season produced. into the first conversation that needs what the silence built, into the first assignment that was waiting for the formation to finish. Walk through it. Before you stand up, 3 things for the week ahead. The first, stop explaining this season to people who are not in it. The work that happened in the private room does not need a public defense. When you try to explain the formation to someone whose framework cannot hold it, you do not clarify, you dilute. The season does not require a spokesperson, it requires a carrier. Let the fruit of it speak before the explanation does. The second, begin writing down what surfaces in the still hours, not as therapy, not as journaling for the sake of emotional processing. As a watchman's log, what God speaks in private needs a record before it can be responsibly carried into the open. The impressions that arrive at 3 in the morning, the phrases that surface during prayer, the specific directions that keep reappearing despite every attempt to rationalize them away. Write them down with enough specificity to return to them when the noise returns and tries to convince you they were not real. The log is the evidence. Build it while the moment is still clear. The third, let one relationship that has naturally faded do so without chasing it. The space it leaves is not an absence. It is a vacancy. And vacancies in this season are not accidents. They are the specific openings through which what is aligned will arrive. Stop filling the gap with the old crowd. The room needs to breathe before the new furnishing can find its place. Jeremiah 1 verse 5 closes this not as comfort but as ground. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. The calling preceded the person. What was built in the hidden room was always the fulfillment of something spoken before you existed. You did not arrive at this season by accident, and you will not leave it by accident. What comes next was already written. The door is not closing again. It is opening outward. There is one more thing this room is built for, and it is the most important thing. Before you step back into everything that waits outside this door, come with me into prayer. Not because the message needs a closing ritual, but because what was named in this room deserves to be placed before the one who named it first. Come. Father, we come to you in the quiet that this room has been holding, not with performance, not with the composed version of ourselves that moves through the public day. We come as the watchmen who have been on post, tired in some places, hopeful in others, uncertain about the timing, but not about the one who set the timing. Thank you for the room, for the evenings that felt empty but were not empty, for the silence that felt like absence but was proximity, for the hours at the wall that felt like waiting but were formation. You were never absent from the closed door. You were building behind it. And now, standing on this side of the season, we understand what we could not understand while it was happening. We receive what was named in this space tonight, not with clenched fists trying to hold something we are not sure we deserve. With open hands, surrendered to your timing, your routing, your definition of what this season produced and what it is now meant to carry into the open. Let what was built in private become what is carried publicly. Let what was formed in silence begin to speak with the authority that silence produced. For those in this room who have been carrying the weight of the doubt voice for years, the one that whispers they are too ordinary for what they sense, too flawed for what was spoken, too late for what was promised, let this be the night that voice loses its jurisdiction. It was never authorized by truth. It was installed by fear in rooms that did not know what to do with what they carried. And fear does not get to define the assignment that was spoken before the person was formed. Let the voice retire with honor. Its work is done. For those standing at the edge of the reorganization, watching old relationships quietly distance, feeling the familiar pull to chase what is leaving and restore what is dissolving, grant the grace to let what needs to go, go. Not with bitterness, not with grief that does not resolve, with the settled confidence of someone who knows the space being created is not loss. It is room for what is coming. Open the doors that could not open while the wrong season was still running. Establish the connections that could not find their way to us, while we were still performing at tables we had already outgrown. Let the provision arrive through the routes we could not have mapped, through the widow in the unexpected village, through the phone call we almost did not answer, through the invitation from the direction we had written off. And give us the grace to receive the full size of what you chose to give without apologizing for it or diminishing it to make others more comfortable. Let the watchman descend from the wall. Let what was seen in the hidden place be spoken in the daylight. Let what was whispered in the private room be carried with the weight it deserves into the places it was always meant to reach. We are here, we are listening, and we are ready, not because the season produced confidence, but because it produced faithfulness. And faithfulness is what you ask of the ones you station, in the name of Jesus, who speaks in the dark and whose voice the dark cannot silence. Amen. If the season was finally named tonight, share this with someone who has gone unusually quiet, someone pulling back without being able to say why. They are in their own closed room. Be the one who places this at their door. Like this as an act of agreement and subscribe. May you leave knowing you were not forgotten in the silence. You were formed in it. And may the one who stationed you in the room be glorified in everything it built.